Welcome to the Angler's Wisdom Podcast,
supercharged by Amped Outdoors Lithium.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period.
catch more fish,
Learn tips, tricks,
techniques, and secrets, and decades of angler's wisdom. Welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! Oh!
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah!
Man, that video clip pumps me up every time. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Angler's Wisdom Podcast, where fishing is life, but safety comes first. I'm Chuck Earls. I'm really fired up for this episode. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties with our guest, but Philly D is in the back taking care of that, and we'll get that dialed in very soon. But if you've ever been chasing giants on the Great Lakes or just trying to land more of the bites that you get, then get ready, because this episode is for you. It's going to change the way that you fish forever. What we're going to be talking about is the strike assist, which, if you've ever watched any kind of underwater footage, what you'll see, especially with salmon, steelhead, walleye, fish like that on the Great Lakes, generally what you'll see is a lot of fish that come up, they strike the lure, even if it's, a deep diving bandit with 3 trebles, they hit that lure and they don't get hooked up. For some reason, we're going to dive into that stuff when we get Calvin on here. But one of the things that makes the biggest difference is allowing your bait presentation to actually get fully inside the fish's mouth. Because a lot of times there's so many different variables. Number one, your speed and the stiffness of the rod, and, any kind of maybe stretch in the line. There's so many different variables that are going to inhibit that lure from getting into the fish's mouth when they gape and try to suck that lure in to eat it. So the strike assist solves that. And basically what it is, it's an inline tube, and it's got a little spring in here. There's a couple different models. You have, I can't remember if the glitter is number 1 or number 2, but one of them is light. It's a light spring. It's great for running spoons, worm harnesses, worm burners, anything like that, where the lure is not going to really pull back on it. And then you have the Model 2, which is designed for like your deep diving crankbaits. And basically, hopefully you can see that, when that fish goes to hit that bait, it has that ability to suck that lure just a little bit further inside of their mouth. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase your hookup ratio. And it's something that we've proved many a times. I've proved it myself personally. I've also had Calvin out on the kayaks, steelhead fishing, and we did really well with it. Pete Quest over in the Eastern Basin, Vision Quest Fishing Charters, he's been running it probably close to 2 years now on many of his charters, if not all. And he's had a ton of success for it. I'll tell you this, what was it, 2 years ago at the Greater Niagara Fishing Expo, Calvin came up to me and he showed me this product. And I almost hit the floor, because I've seen plenty of underwater footage, and I've seen that happen. I've seen the strikes and the missed hookups, along with some other things that you you learn from underwater footage. Like, you know, sometimes the fish will follow it for a mile till it does something different. But when he told me about the concept and he started to explain it, it was like a light bulb went off. You know, it was a no-brainer for me. I had to try it. And, you know, at this point, it's just it's something that's gonna increase your catch rate on the water, you know, increase your productivity during your fishing adventures, you know, because depending on scheduling, maybe you don't have many days to fish. So you want to be as productive as you can, and you know, use the tips and tricks and stuff like that to increase your hookups. So that's pretty much what I got for you as far as what we're going to be talking about in the show. Now, Calvin is a very, very smart man. I forget exactly what his background is, but it's based on physics and all that stuff. Just a great guy to sit down and talk to. Hey Phil, how are we? How's that project coming? We get him fixed up?
I'm on. Right now I am just waiting to hear back from him. I did tell him to go to the StreamYard app and download that on his iPhone with his headphones, and that's always the emergency way to go.
Right.
I haven't heard back from him yet, but he is working on it as of 3 minutes ago. You now know
Cool.
what I know.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm sure well, you might as well hang out. We'll just talk for a minute and entertain the entertain the audience. Well,
good evening,
we get
everybody.
that fixed up. So we have a couple cool things coming up with the Angler's Wisdom podcast. I'm actually heading out to Breast Bay this weekend just to kind of play around. There's a park out there, Sterling State Park. It's an incredible park. If you've never been there, I definitely recommend going and taking a look. Take your family, you know, open it up on Google Maps and just check it out. But the fishing is also incredible out there. And I just found out earlier that the Michigan Walleye Trail has a tournament out of there on Saturday. So that's going to make things interesting as well. And then 2 weeks after? Yeah, well, I think I found out about 2 hours ago. Well, I didn't know last night. I seen it a couple hours ago. And then 2 weeks 2 weeks from that, you start your first tournament, right?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll be competing in the BASS Ohio Kayak Championships at Alum Creek, May 17th. I will be there basically 15th, 16th, 17th, and then leave on the 18th. It's May 1st, but last month I was also in the USA Kayak Fishing Magazine. I got an excerpt with Roy, which was really nice of him. It's been an exciting month here.
Roy's a good guy. Definitely go over there and check out his magazine. He also has a podcast every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called the Kayak Cafe Podcast. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Let me get him tested in. Mr. Vanderboon, How are you? Can you hear me?
There we go.
All right, let me turn him up here.
Or let me video in. It's not letting me hear you.
So, are your headphones in?
Yeah. Sorry about this, everybody listening at home or watching at home. You know, this is when you're doing a live presentation, a live podcast. This is how it goes, and you know, it kind of makes it fun because it gives you challenges.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Thank you for bearing. Yeah, thank you for bearing with us. He probably reset so that he could connect his headphones.
Yeah, that makes sense. Without the headphones, sometimes you just can't hear on an iPhone. That's the only thing I really don't like about the app.
I think moving forward, maybe we should try to do like a media test a couple days ahead of time. That way we could get it dialed in.
Any way you want to do it, brother. Usually it's an AV quick 15 minute. We usually don't have this type of problem.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I know.
I call them growing pains.
You know, I want to respect the audience's time and everything like that. And on top of that, it makes my job so much harder because then I have to actually cut this out before I release the podcast. So yeah, we'll just plan on that. Hopefully
no
Calvin's getting set up. Again, sorry about this, guys. Let's see, what tips can I give you? So I was talking about the underwater footage, you know, and if you just go on YouTube and search underwater footage of the species you're trying to target, you'll generally find some good stuff.
True.
And hold on, let me just finish this for him. And like I said, one of the things you'll notice is that fish might follow for a quarter mile, half mile, a mile until it decides to strike or probably just turns off. So one of the things that you can do to kind of combat that is, you know, you see the walleye guys, they do S curves when they're trolling. And basically what they're doing is they're speeding up their outside rod, you know, that they're turning, and then they're slowing down their inside rod just to either smack that fish in the face with the lure, or make it seem like that bait now knows that the predator's behind it and is trying to get away. And both situations could entice that strike. So,
Calvin, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me good?
Yes, I can.
Yes, sir.
Now let me just get them tweaked real quick, and my fat behind will be out of y'all's way. All right. Calvin, do you sound good? You got a good visual? Chuck, we're good to go, brother. I'm out of here.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Calvin, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Chuck?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Took 3 devices, but we made it work.
Yeah, that's all right. You know, it's that's just how it goes.
Sure is.
So
me and technology.
I introduced the strike assist to the audience a little bit while we were waiting, and just kind of talked about it a little bit. I didn't go into all the scientific background and all that. But before we get into the strike assist itself, what's your story, Calvin? How did you get into fishing initially, and what led you to invent the strike assist?
Well, I'll condense that backstory. I grew up on the Grand River in Michigan, and I bought a boat when I was 10. I just fished all the time. My Uncle John got me into trolling on Lake Michigan. He used to pick me up at 4 a.m. on Saturday, and we'd tow. He had a 26-foot boat. We'd go out there and fish. I don't really think he knew what he was doing. We didn't catch many fish, but I loved being out there, and that's kind of what started the bug. I still love stream fishing, but it's easy, and I like trolling because you got to figure it out every day. It's like archery hunting. It's more of a challenge. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. It's oh, can you do me a favor and just turn your phone sideways so that
Sure.
The format of the video, there we go. Nice.
And then as far as strike assist, that was because I was out trolling, and I'm not a fantastic fisherman, and you get 5-6 bites and you land 2 fish, and it just bugged me. And I was like, well, man, what a difference that'd be if I could just land all the fish. You got 3 hooks on the back of a lure, and why can't you just get them in the boat? So I started watching underwater trolling footage that other people had up on YouTube videos, and I'd watch them strike, and not get touched by a hook. And I was like, well, what's happening? I'm like, oh, duh, they suction feed, and the line tension keeps pulling that bait away from the fish. So in their world, when they pop their mouth open, food comes into their mouth. They're not trying like a cat or a dog to put their mouth over the bait. They're expecting that it sucks into their mouth. And we screw all that up by putting line tension and pulling the bait away. And I don't know, it's weird because we all know it. Like, we call it short striking, even though It's not. It's the fish is doing everything it's supposed to. We just keep pulling the bait away from it. Or, if you're reeling in, if you're casting a bait and a fish hits, you stop. You give them the bait. You get that tension out of your line. Or we know if you're jigging, you catch them on the drop because that's when there's no tension in your line. So like we know all these things, but it just never got put together.
Right. That's interesting. I guess it just depends. Like it's the same way I look at things, it's like, why is this happening? And that took you down this road to design this incredible product.
Yeah, and that's
so
problem solving. No, just solving a problem. It's fun.
Exactly. How did the background in physics and science education influence your invention process?
Ton. I'm wired that way, and I taught physics, and I just think that way. And this whole thing is just fine-tuned physics. So basically, when you're trolling, there's a delicate balance with this spring, essentially. Because if that spring isn't stretched at all when you're trolling, then it's not going to stretch much when the fish strikes. So you want it to be stretched while you're trolling. But if it's stretched so far that it's in the back of the tube and it doesn't have any room left, then it can't do its job. So basically, I just had to figure out how much drag do each type of lure produce at different speeds. Then I looked up, and there's been millions of dollars worth of research done on suction feeding, and I could calculate from their research how much water is added at strike, water velocity is added at strike. And so then I can extrapolate how much the spring will be extended when a fish strikes. And then you work it backwards to engineer the exact spring you need. And initially I did it with one spring in a much longer tube. And the guys that were testing it said they wanted it shorter. So I split it into two different springs, one stiffer, one's lighter. But the tube is shorter, which is what they wanted.
And with your testing, you're generally running it behind the AquaView. What's the name of their inline underwater camera?
Yeah, it's the AquaView Strike View. The first year and a half was just every other line was a strike assist, no strike assist. So you'd have the same rod on the other side of the boat with the same bait, and just figuring out how many bites is each rod getting, how many fish are being landed by each rod, and then comparing, the strike assist rods versus the non-strike assist rods. Because if you put a camera in there, and you have to put a camera on every rod, but then the cameras sometimes screw up the bite. So the cameras influence things. So eventually I had enough data, and I wanted to have that underwater footage where I could actually see the fish open its mouth, and you could watch that leader get pulled out of the strike assist from the suction. And so then I kind of switched gears from data collection to video.
Nice. And I'm pulling up your website. I think my computer's working slow. We'll show a couple of those videos here in a bit. It's pretty cool to see it actually work under the water.
Yeah.
So walk us through the journey from idea to working prototype. What did that process look like? And you're making them at home, right? I mean, in your shop.
Yep.
You and your family.
Mm-hmm. That process looked like try something. At first, it was just getting a stable shell. So the tube itself, because that spring, it can't overextend. So you've got to have the tube be what you're actually fighting the fish through. So once a fish is hooked, the spring is pinned, and this tube has to be strong enough to fight a fish. And so I just used existing components that I could customize. The spring was completely custom, but the rest of it is just stuff I bought and customized. And then the biggest part was getting this plastic tube together in a strong enough way. So it took, I think, 15 different adhesives and epoxies to get one that was strong enough. So now it's super strong, and the tensile strength on the plastic is over 125 pounds. So there's the wire cable will break before the plastic does. But then it was just iterations, and you'd make small adjustments based on feedback and just keep perfecting it. And we did that for 2 years. And then once we had it dialed in, we started selling them last spring.
Nice. Yeah, I remember when we first met, they weren't even on the market yet.
No.
It was pretty fun, especially first time I took them out with the worm harnesses. You know, and one of the challenges when using a strike assist with a worm harness combination, especially if you're going slow, is, you know, there's a lot of variables, a lot of things moving. So the best way that I found to run it is with an inline weight versus like a bottom bouncer setup, you know, because that bottom bouncer setup, that's going to get tangled a lot anyways. And then you add the strike assist and maybe even a camera in there. And then you got a mess on your hands. Hey, Phil, I sent you the link to the website. Could you pull that up on your computer and share your screen? Is that possible? And it's under the media tab for the strike assist videos.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
dude, I got it.
I don't know if it's because we're running that second camera over here, but my computer is like not like in the extra resource of trying to pull up the website.
I saw that. Yeah, I got you.
And while he's doing that, that 2 years of testing, basically, I don't know, I come from a science background, and I've done like peer-reviewed science journals or articles in peer-reviewed science journals. So I'm very geared towards, you got to prove it, and the data should be able to prove it statistically. And so I had a group of charter captains that were, yeah, I'd go fish with them, and then if they wanted to keep running them, they would run them on, you know, half the rods and give me the data. And so it's not me, it's not my bias in there, it's just other people that don't have any bias, just giving me the data. And then every week I would send them the results so they could see like it's helping or it's not. Because if it was screwing things up for some reason, I didn't want it to affect their livelihood.
Right. That's interesting. It's you know, that's truly the way to do it though. And a lot of us anglers, we do kind of a certain variations of that, I guess, with, you know, fishing logs and all that stuff, just trying to identify those actual patterns. Because like you said, I mean, that, you know, the truth is in the data.
Yep. And after the first year, what the data showed, it was mostly spoons, mostly Lake Michigan. There were some walleye and brown trout in Lake Ontario from Pete Alex. He's another Fish USA pro guy with you, but the average was 36% more fish. And for all the captains, it also cut their landing loss, or their landing loss in half, meaning without the strike assist, the landing ratio is 67%, so losing 33% of the fish. And with the strike assist, it was 84%, so they were only losing 16% of the fish.
I mean, that makes a big difference, especially some of these charter captains, they have, you know, 4 to 6 people on their boat.
Yep.
That's a lot of fish to send them home with.
Yeah. So if you got,
go ahead.
No, I was just say if you got 10 bites and you were bringing 6 fish home versus 10 bites and you're bringing, you know, 8 or 9 fish home.
Yep. That's extra meat in the freezer. It's good, good cleaner food. Probably much cleaner than they're trying to sell us at the grocery stores. Hey, Phil, did you get that website working? Which video did you want to pull up?
You asking me or Phil?
You.
Either one is fine. They have 2 different functions. The one, the underwater, just shows the fish actually, you know, making the strike assist work. And then the other one is me just kind of going through it.
Let's pull that one up. It would be the first one, right?
So the first one is kind of an introduction.
Okay.
The second one there is set up and use. And then if you scroll down further, there's one that has kind of a green icon, and that's the underwater one.
Okay. Yeah, pull up that the underwater one.
I'm on it.
It's got a very green Lake Erie water hue to it.
So while we're pulling that up, and we can even talk over that as well, 'cause that's just
Phil,
showing it
go
work.
to the home page, and it'll be scroll down. You'll see it on the home page. There, that one. Yep. I'm narrating it. I don't know if audio is going to play or not.
And you can notice it extend at strike. You can watch it get sucked into its mouth. And then here, frame by frame, so each of these frames is a 60th of a second, and the strike lasts for 3 frames. You'll see here in a minute. So it lasts for 1/20th of a second total. So right here, after this, the fish will open his mouth and start the water flow. And then here you can see the strike assist leader, and you'll watch it extend 3 frames in a row as the lure gets sucked into the fish's mouth. And the fish didn't have any closing speed with the lure. It got up to the lure and was going the same speed. And here you can see the lure halfway in the fish's mouth. The strike assist extended between 2 to 3 inches. Then you can see the strike assist bottom out when it starts to turn, which will help set the hook. You get a sudden stop at the end.
Nice. Cool. You could go ahead and pull that out. So it's kind of hard to see on underwater footage, obviously, in Lake Erie because of all the particulate matter in the water. But if you go on the website, you might be able to see it a little bit better in action, and especially when he slows it down. But anybody that's been fishing long enough, and anybody that's been fishing the Great Lakes and looking at it at a deeper perspective, it's going to make sense for. So what kind of challenges did you face along the way?
Yeah. Every phase has its own challenges. I think the biggest challenge overall is just having people understand what it does. Not like a big picture, like, let's fish suck it into its mouth. So like they get that, but then you gotta kind of explain how to rig it. You gotta explain like why it works better with some baits than others, and just getting people to think about suction, because that's just never been part of fishing, for trolling anyway. And so I think that's the biggest barrier. And then also just, getting the word out there. But every phase had its own challenges. Like I said, initially it was, how do I get a tube that's strong enough? And then the next thing was, okay, I need to have the right spring. So I'd order springs, like custom springs, and they weren't made right. And I had to go through 4 different manufacturers until I got a manufacturer that actually made the springs to spec. So then, yeah, you have to get the springs, then test 100 springs individually to make sure that when you hook a known mass onto it, the spring extends the proper distance. So you do that, mark it, and then take it off, put the next spring on, put the mass back on, mark where that one extended to. And the first 3 manufacturers, they were too stiff, they were too light, they were inconsistent. Like the same mass would make the spring stretch 4 inches on one spring and 2 inches on another. And so there was that. Then once the spring was dialed in, there's the cable, because you can't have a metal cable on a plastic tube because it'll cut its way through. So then you get nylon coated, but then the nylon coating will pull apart with a single crimp. So then it was custom crimps that were longer and had more surface area. So just lots of little things.
Yeah. One sec. Hey Phil, what's going on with our format, like the camera formats? It's all over the place. Or maybe is that my
I don't
feed?
know. I don't know what keeps happening. I haven't touched it and it keeps changing itself.
Okay. Anyways, that's all right. I just try to make it look good for the people watching at home. So during testing, what feedback changed your direction the most?
I think that I want it shorter. That was a really significant one. That meaning they wanted the device to be shorter. And that meant I had to go from one spring to multiple springs, and then you have to figure out, you know, where do those overlap and how much. Yeah, there's a lot behind changing to multiple springs. And then also stealthy, you know, so you want it clear. That was another thing because I had one with a clear head, one with a black head, and they wanted just clear, so I put sparkles in one and clear in the other. And then in the first year of testing, I also found out that single spring model at higher speeds with spoons, it would mess with the action of the spoon because there's too many coils in the spring. So that was a very significant change. So when I dropped down to a shorter spring in two different spring rates, that got rid of that problem. And then since I started selling them, the feedback from customers trying it in ways that I didn't think would work, that's made a big change too. So like, I think I even told you they're not going to work with crawler harnesses, and then you ended up trying it, and you're like, hey, I think it works. And then I sent it to another guy who was doing a lot of worm fishing on a traditional charter boat, and he confirmed it. Same thing. There was a guy who ran them with peanut flies and dodgers for coho, and I hadn't tried that. So that whole exploring where it works has been a big learning curve. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I know one of my buddies down south, he was asking about using it for striper, or not striper, tarpon.
Yep.
I think I'd mentioned that to you. Obviously, that would have to be probably a beefier size, but I would assume they'd probably work really great for ocean run striper. You know,
Yep.
Chesapeake Bay and that area, just trolling for those ocean run. That's pretty cool. You know, and I always enjoy things that you can play with and experiment with. You know, so don't be afraid to get out there and experiment with your tackle with products like this. You know, it's gonna convert you into a better angler.
And if you don't mind, I'll just explain real quick. So a fish, there's a picture of a suction cone on the homepage of the website as a visual. But basically, you know, if this is a fish's mouth when it's open, that's gape. And they produce a suction cone that's one gape long. So the bigger the fish, the bigger the suction cone. And in order to feed successfully, that prey item has to be within 1/2 gape. So let's say you got a decent sized walleye with a 4-inch gape. It has to be within 2 inches before it pops its mouth open. Otherwise, the fish can swim out. And so if you think about like a crawler harness, for example, you've got the main source of drag is the blades, and then you've got a worm length behind those blades. And the fish is back here. So I was thinking it's not going to work because the suction cone isn't reaching those blades. But I wasn't thinking about two things. One was you're trolling really slow, so those blades aren't generating much drag. And then two, when the fish strikes, it can pull just the worm into its mouth, meaning that line can slide through the beads and through the clevis. And so
Right.
that's why it's working with those crawler harnesses. Or like I don't know, like a peanut fly is really short and it's wide. And
Mhm.
so even with a small fish, the entire bait is inside the suction cone, and it's got a wide surface area for the strike cyst or for the suction to act on. So the strike cyst performs really well. Or a spoon, the main source of drag is that cup in the back, and that's right next to the fish. So it does really well with spoons. Um, or like you use those Walleye Nation Creation boogie shads, and those are real short. And so
Mhm.
they work well because, again, the entire bait's inside the suction cone.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I kind of derailed where you're going there for a second. Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're good. I'm just trying to find the spot in my notes. This jumping with I don't know what the hell the format's doing. It's driving me crazy and super distracting. So I apologize for that. I don't know if it's StreamYard or I don't know if we know. Anyways, let me find my spot. I apologize, guys. So while I'm looking for that, how do people find the Strike Assist and where can they get their hands on some?
So just strikesys.com. If you're in Ohio, all the Fin Feather Fur Outfitter stores have them in stock. So there's 5 of those retail stores. But otherwise, you can get them online directly. Um, just strikesys.com. Go to the shop section, and right now, I just did a podcast with Tangle Tackle, Chris on Tangle Tackle, and I'm doing this one. So I'm going to run a promotion through the end of May, buy 5, get 1 free. So all they have to
Nice.
do is just order in quantities of 5, and they'll get a free one. If they need to tell me which one they want, there's a note section they can fill out when they check out.
Yeah, and that's basically, style 1 and style 2, right?
Yep,
Depending
Model 1, Model
on
2.
Model 1 and Model 2. And I believe we have a picture of that graph, right? In the studio, Phil. Pop that up one more time. This just shows you, and I believe this is on the website as well. I'm almost
Yep.
positive it is. But it'll tell you, what you're usually running, what model is going to work the best. And you notice, when you get down to like your shallow baits and your deep body baits, really it depends on the speed, and like Lake Erie, we're changing speeds a lot. So I don't leave home without both of them.
Yep. And
So are you working? Go ahead. Sorry.
I just say, and you can err on this, like if it's close, like if you're, let's say that says it'll work up to 2 miles an hour and you're going to be 1.9, I would just err on the side of Model 2, because if you're making a turn and it's an outside board, it's going over 1.9, and then the strike assist can't work because, um, it's all the way against the back of the tube. So it can't do its job. So if you push that upper limit, it may or may not be working. It's super easy to check. You just stick it over the side of the boat and look at it, and you can see how much extension room there is.
Right. Yeah, and you basically don't want that spring further than what, halfway, right? Extended halfway.
I want to see 2 inches of extension room left. So
Right.
if you figure the average fish has a 4-inch gape, and they're going to be within 1/2 gape when they strike, that means that fish is at least, it's 2 inches or less away from the bait when it strikes. So you want at least 2 inches for that bait to move. So on the chart, when it shows the upper limit, that upper limit means it's only got 2 inches left to extend.
Right. Are there any new accessories or any new models or any new techniques that you're working on?
Models, potentially. So my focus for this year is flasher flies for the salmon and trout world. I initially would just thought the strike assist would either mess up the action of the flasher or mess up the action of the fly. And so I would put it on the shoot rigger, which is the middle rigger, and there's no rod that's like it on the boat. There's nothing to compare to. So from a data collection standpoint, it was useless. So I would put a spin doctor and a fly with a strike assist out, and we caught fish and we didn't lose any, but I didn't have anything to compare to. But then guys bought them last year and started running them, and they're having success. So this year, my focus is quantifying is strike assist helping with flasher flies. And if it is, then I'll come out with a model 0 because it'll have a super light spring for those flies because they generate very little drag.
That sounds interesting.
And then you said techniques, I think, in there as well. And that's been mostly the customers teaching me because they're trying it in ways that I haven't. And I don't have enough data for a lot of them to give you something conclusive. But yes, I'm learning about my own products from my customers.
Yeah, that's always fun. It's kind of giving you a little bit of a glimpse into the future of some of the fishing tech. Where do you see the industry heading?
Be a little more specific.
So beyond, the flasher flies and stuff like that, where do you see, is there fast forward 5-10 years down the road,
Yep.
Is there an area or a target species or maybe saltwater or something like that you possibly looking into maybe evolving into?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say the two species, like there's these other fisheries that I don't know a lot about, but it would work well. And the two for sure are stripers. Even if it's not in the ocean, like Lake Cumberland in Kentucky, I would go down there and troll for stripers and catch them on spoons when that was a long time ago. But it would work well for that. Bass are really good at suction feeding. And then also kokanee and rainbow trout out in the western lakes. A lot of those fish that are well known for getting off. So kokanee and rainbows, the baits they're using would work well for strike assist.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So what's been the most rewarding moment for you in this journey?
The driving force for me from the beginning is I want to help people catch more fish. And I want to help myself catch more fish and I want to help other people catch more fish. And it's been very rewarding to have people buy them, be skeptical, use them, and then, call me or see me and be like, hey, I want to tell you what happened. And they're in. I just had a charter captain, George Coons. He was doing a Erie PA steelhead tournament. And
Yeah.
the first day they lost, I think 5 out of the 8 fish. And he had heard about strike assist from Pete Alex, but I know this now because I talked to him, but he just thought they were gimmick. He's like, I don't know, Pete catches a lot of fish anyway. I know he wins tournaments with him, but it's a gimmick. And so they weren't using him. But one of his tournament buddies, Josh, had bought strike assist over the winter, but hadn't used them yet. And they're like, hey, let's put these things on. Like, it's not going to get worse. And then the next day it flipped and they only lost, I think, 2 out of 8 fish. And they ended up in second place on the tournament. And then Pete won that tournament and he was running strike assist both days. Or there's another guy, I'm blanking on his name, but he was on Lake Ontario. And I had seen him at the Niagara show and he went to the seminar I did there, and he's like, this makes sense. And then he did his first charter on Lake Ontario for lake trout, and they were 0 for 3 without strike assist. And so he told his mate, he's like, put this thing on. So they did, and then they went 4 for 4 on the strike assist rods, and they went 2 for 7 on the non-strike assist rods. And so he called me afterwards. He's like, it works. I'm in. And he ordered more of them, and he's like, I got to run these in my tournaments. So that's the fun part.
Right. For if you were going to give some advice for anglers or creators, anybody out there with some big ideas, what kind of advice, or what advice would you give them?
I think you got to be passionate about what you're trying to accomplish. Like this is very much so a labor of love. You know, it's 4 years in. I spend probably 20 hours a week on it. I don't get paid. I don't make money. I put a lot of money into it. If you don't love it, you're never going to get to the point where you've got the growth phase for the business. You've got to be willing to just get through, 5 to 10 years of working for free. And then eventually you'll build something, but it's going to take a long time. So if you're going to do it, you got to be willing to stick it out, and do it right. Like, there was last year, I had 2 people that the spring came disconnected inside the tube because I changed the wire bend diameter by 2/1000 of an inch, and it wasn't melting enough plastic. They didn't like break and come apart, but the spring separated inside the tube, which meant it didn't function. So I fixed it, and I sent them new ones. And then I had hundreds of them that were made that way, and I just scrapped them all. And the odds are it may never have happened again, but I wasn't going to have that happen. Like my worst nightmare is that these fail on someone, and they've never broke, like they've never come apart. So that spring separating was the worst thing that happened, but they didn't, lose a fish or anything. So just do it right. And I think the other thing is just, I was very careful to not make the data what I wanted it to be. And very much so in that first year, the data could have told me this doesn't work. And it might have been that the physics worked just fine, but the fish didn't like the tube, or, there could have been a bunch of things you don't think about that might have caused it to not work. So I guess you got to be willing to walk away too.
That's really great advice, because there's so much junk out here today. We need more people that takes pride in the product they produce, and the great thing about what you do is manufacturing them, yourself. When something like that happens, it's a super quick change, and you have a lot more control on that quality control side of things. And on the second part, you're right.
Yep.
Don't force it, don't fake it, don't fudge the numbers, don't be like the government and that stuff. You want to be legitimate, because that's what's going to give that longevity. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think people, authenticity is easy to figure out. People can tell if you're being insincere.
100%. So what are the most common questions or concerns that you get from anglers and people looking at the strike assist?
I'll get the top 3 or 4. So one is leader length. You can use whatever leader length you want. So there's guys on Lake Michigan, Lake Ontario, and Lake Erie too. It's kind of got their later, but they're running super long leads behind their dipsies. So there's guys that are running 20 to 30 foot long leaders behind their dipsies. And they're hand lining the fish in, because obviously the dipsy hits the rod and then you still got 30 feet left. That's more of a thing in clear water, but that doesn't present a problem. You can use whatever leader length you want. Most guys are running 5-foot leaders because it's about a rod length. So you can reel the strike assist up to the tip of the rod and still net the fish easily. If you push it beyond 5-6 feet, it just gets harder to net. So that's one. Another one is, where do you put it in the setup? So like if you're running a dipsy, it's always going to end strike assist leader bait. So if you're running a dipsy with a spoon, it's just dipsy, strike assist leader bait. If it went strike assist dipsy, then now the dipsy is just going to bottom out the strike assist and it can't do anything. So you can't have anything but the leader and the bait afterwards. So if you're, let's say you're using inline weights, it's going to be inline weight, strike assist, leader, bait. Let's see which model to use. That's another one. I would say in general, Model 1s, I call it the spoon feeder model. If you're 2.5 and under, you can use it for any size spoon. A mag spoon 2.5 is kind of the max. When I'm trolling, I'm going above and below 2.5, and so I just use the mag spoons Model 2 because it's, it can handle it above 2.5. And then the other spoon sizes, everything smaller than a mag's on the Model 1. If you're running a fly with a flasher, it's a Model 1. If you're running a crawler harness, under 2 miles an hour, it's probably going to be a Model 1, depending on your blades. But again, that's super easy to check. Just stick it over the side of the boat. Model 2s, it's called plugs and cranks. It's going to be most of your plugs and crankbaits, depending on speed.
Right. So what do you hope people take away from this episode?
So last year I did a podcast with a guy named Bob Hines. He was on there with me. It was a couple of captains that had run him for the year. And one thing he said was, this is the next evolution in fishing. And, he's like lead core. When lead core came out, and there's a lot of people that fought it, and then eventually like, oh, this helps. Like certain days, lead core's the ticket. I would say that's a very good summary for strike assist. It's the next evolution. Right now, when you're trolling and you have line tension on that bait, you're fighting biology, because you can see them pop their mouth open trying to get that in their mouth, and you keep pulling it away with your boat, and the strike assist just lets biology happen, which is that bait gets pulled into their mouth. I think that's probably the best summary. Is it's the next evolution in fishing. It's something to figure out, and there's things we'll fine tune, but if you're not doing it, you're leaving fish behind. I'll give a caveat to that. So like even Pete Alex, he runs them on all his spoon rods in tournaments, but when he's doing Lake Erie charter trips, most of the time he's not running strike assist because he's going to go get his limit, because walleye fishing is really good. And so if you're getting your limit without a strike assist, then who cares? If you're not getting your limit and you want to catch more fish, strike assist will help you catch more fish. If you're tournament fishing and it's not about a limit, but it's about making sure every fish gets in the boat so you can get the right fish. The bigger a fish is, the bigger their suction cone is, and the better a strike assist works. So strike assist will work better with bigger fish. So, yeah.
And how can our viewers reach out to you to offer feedback for future improvements or products?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from them. On my contacts, on my webpage under contacts, it has my email and my phone number. Be happy to hear from them.
Perfect. And I will try to get that copy and paste it in the description, at least over on YouTube and Spotify as well. All right. Before we let you go, we're going to reel you back in for one last piece of angler's wisdom. Over the years growing up, if there was one or two pieces of wisdom or knowledge that maybe you've learned or a mentor has shared with you that you feel is very important to the sport, what would it be?
I'm going to go. Can I do two?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to go two
Absolutely.
different directions. The first one's going to be sacrifice taking other people out fishing. I've got young kids, and when you take kids, it's about the kids and not about you. And even if you don't have kids, like my Uncle John took me out fishing, and if he hadn't, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now doing this. But he's the one that took me out. He picked up, a little snot-nosed kid that he wasn't responsible for and took him out fishing a couple times a summer, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So I think that just investing in other people and introducing them to the sport can make a big difference in their lives. From a different angle, just doing all the data collection and being on the boat with all these different charter captains, like yourself, they have a system. And I think probably one of the biggest aha moments for me was you watch them, like you realize you're on level 1 and they're on level 6. And level 1 for them doesn't even take conscious thought. They just have done it so much that they don't have to think about it. And I'm still here having to think about it. And so I think there's a huge value in just repetition. So for trolling, there's a big learning curve. But I think if you're just getting into it and you're trying to get better and you go out and you don't catch many fish or any fish, but you're building those reps of, how to deploy a spread without tangling lines and, how to make a certain bait get to a certain part of the water column. Like there's those reps where it becomes second nature and you don't have to think about it anymore. That means you can now turn your attention to level 2 and level 3, and you just keep getting better because all the other stuff is something you don't have to think about anymore. And sharpen your hooks.
Definitely sharpen your hooks. But those other two, that is a phenomenal advice. It's, you never know what impact you have on others, as well as the future generation. So you see a kid that looks like they'd want to go fishing, make it happen. And who knows, maybe they come out and, change the industry and invent the next best thing that's changing the way we look at fishing.
Exactly. Chuck, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I haven't really heard your voice. I mean, I know we've talked, but on this podcast, I never heard your voice. What's been your experience in feedback, I guess, from you directly?
On the strike assist itself?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it really, the number one thing that comes to mind is remember that guide trip that I had where we actually discovered that it worked with the worm harnesses. Client was really struggling, and it's like you said, it's a levels thing, right? And if you're trying to kayak fish on Lake Erie, especially if it's not flat, there's so many different variables. You're trying to keep your right heading. You're trying to do all of these things that maybe you don't even know you're supposed to do yet. And that's my job is teaching them along the way and getting all those intricate pieces put together. But he was getting tons of short strikes and he was just struggling with getting those hookups. So I pulled a couple strike assists out, or I think he was running one rod at the time, because I'll start them off with like one rod. That way they're not shifting their direction to two rods. You need to learn what you need to do on that one rod, then it's super easy to shift, right? And I mean, it was shit within 30 seconds or a minute. It was fish on, and that when he landed. And he ended up having a great day, and that was really the huge game changer. And that just basically, it kind of stoked the fire for me. You know, looking at this product is something that really does seriously make a difference. And on a day like that, when it truly counts, you know, it could be the thing that seals the deal. And I mean, beside that, you know, when we first met, I don't know if you could tell, but the conversation we had, I mean, it blew me away because I've watched hundreds of hours of underwater footage, and I've never, you know, I don't have a biology and science and physics background like you do. But I could see there was some kind of problem there. And when you approached me and showed me this, it just blew my mind, because, you know, I knew what the problem was. And just by the way that it worked, I knew it was.
Yeah, it's been fun. The response from a lot of people has been, I don't know why someone didn't do this before.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think sometimes in fishing, we get so caught up on the so-called rules,
Yep.
you know, that are passed down and taught. No, fish don't do this, you know, blah, blah, blah. That we've never even looked at it in that depth.
Yeah. And that whole, like, so like you mentioned, running the underwater cameras, that's been a whole different thing for me. I'm running the cameras because I want evidence of the strike assist working. And I've got a whole bunch of probably 12 or 13 underwater strikes on camera where you can see the strike assist extend. I have not taken the time to edit those and get them out, and I will this summer. But in watching all of that footage, you learn a ton just about fish in general. Maybe not even relevant to strike assist, but you're learning about it. Just how different species behave differently when they feed, head striking versus tail striking, and what that looks like. I think one of the big takeaways for me has been fish operate on a totally different timeline than humans do. There's been a couple times in my life where kind of time stood still. You get into like a high stress environment and stuff's going on and just everything slows down. That's everyday life for fish relative to us. So those underwater cameras, the frame rate's 60 frames per second. So each frame is a 60th of a second. And the fish, their mouth is only open for a 20th of a second when they're feeding. I mean, you have a 20th of a second to get a hook in their mouth. And it's less than the blink of an eye. And then what's super crazy is I was fishing on Erie with Jason Fisher, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, and
Yep.
we had a steelhead come in. I don't even know what happened. I just saw it on the footage afterwards. But the steelhead comes in and just blazes in to hit a spoon. And you watch its mouth open in the first frame. You can see the strike assist start to extend. But by the second frame, it had such a high closing speed, the lure was already in the back of his throat, and the strike just really didn't matter. When fish are super aggressive like that, the strike just isn't going to help you very much because they have a high closing speed. So second frame, the lure's in the back of his mouth. Third frame, his mouth is closed. Fourth frame, he starts to open his mouth again. Fifth frame, the lure's kicked out and just caught for a second on his lip, and he shakes his head once in the sixth frame, and then it's over. So that's 1/10 of a second. That fish came in, struck, lure completely in his mouth, flushes it back out of his mouth, and spits the hook in 1/10 of a second.
Wow.
And the other thing I've seen is silverfish, like a spoon, is cycling sideways, and salmon and trout, you'll watch them shifting with the spoon. So as that spoon moves, they stay directly behind it, and they're not lagging. It's not like they're missing it. They're directly behind it and moving exactly with that spoon. So I call it shadowing. But then lake trout are different. They can shadow, but most of the time they don't. And you'll see the spoon going back and forth, and the lake trout is just kind of staying there and letting it go back and forth across his face. Yeah,
That's interesting. You know, it makes me wonder, like, what is the perspective between like the lake trout that's staying there and watching that spoon move like this, or you know, like the salmon that's shadowing it. You know,
Yep.
because if it's shadowing it, then that spoon doesn't really, the perceived spoon doesn't really seem like it's going side to side, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, their perspective on the spoon is static. Um, I think it's just different species behave differently. And like I said, lake trout can shadow. So like I have like a 16-pound lake trout that I caught up in Alpena with Steve from Chumbucket Charters. And on video, you can watch him come in, and it's the big lakers that tend to not shadow. The little ones come in hot and they don't stall out behind the bait. But I think those big lakers, they have such a bucket mouth, they can be lazy about it because they have such a big suction cone. Um, but the lake trout came in, the spoon's going back and forth, he strikes, but when they strike, they lift their head, and when they lift their head, they can't see the bait, and that bait moves to the side. So they strike where the spoon used to be. So he misses. Like the strike assist did nothing. The suction cone wasn't acting on the spoon at all because it was off to the side of the fish. So the fish strikes and turns, which once they feed, they turn and go back where they were. And so he turns kind of like, oh, I've got that in my mouth now. And then you see him whip around like, oh, I missed it. And then he does the same thing, gets behind it, misses it again, whips around again, and then he starts shadowing it and strikes. And then he just absolutely hammered it. And the spoon like disappeared into his mouth. The entire spoon went into his mouth because he shadowed it and then the suction cone hit it and he was ticked off. So they can, but they just don't. Um, or like I don't know, when fish get hooked, they do different things. So like steelhead or like a lasso chipmunk, they just go absolutely spastic. Lakers, they just open their mouth and swim down. They just go bucket mouth and go for the bottom. Um, Kings, I don't have a ton of king footage because they tend to strike when it's early morning and it's hard to get underwater footage because of the light. Cohos, they go nuts, but they don't struggle as hard as a steelhead does. So I don't know. It's just interesting. They all behave differently.
Right. Have you had anybody try it like trolling for other species that are maybe not Great Lake species? Like, I don't know, people troll for bass and stuff like that, maybe.
Not, oh, I do know guys have caught bass on them. I don't know that they were intentionally catching bass, but they were catching smallmouth. And they would work well for smallmouth if you're trolling. I don't know a ton of people that troll for smallmouth. Um, I've sold strike assist to I think around 20 states, and some of those states they're not fishing anything that we're fishing here. But as far as what I've actually heard back from people, I don't have anything more than that.
Right. You know, so that's a great reminder. Don't be afraid to, you know, shoot Calvin a message, even if it's just to say, hey, you know, I bought it. I'm trolling for crappie or something like that. You know, that's always enjoyable to hear, right?
Yeah, and also I don't have anyone that's run them and given them a fair shake, right? Like you go and run it for multiple trips to really give it a try that's had anything negative. Like I haven't had anyone that said, oh, this isn't working. Um, I think I guess I would take the challenge, the strike assist challenge, and just go run them and give it enough time in trips and fish to convince yourself that it does or doesn't work. And that should be the same number. Like if you went out and you put them on half the rods and the strike assist caught 3 times more fish, you wouldn't be like, oh, these strike assist works great. That's one trip. It could have been a lot of different things besides strike assist. So go out, run them on 10 trips, really try it. It's the numbers are going to show you the truth. Um, and even if you're not running them half and half, like that Bob Hines, he ran them on all his spoon rods last year, and he caught 300 and some fish, and he had a 96% landing ratio. And he's been chartering for decades, and he knows that his landing ratios, he told me, is usually about 70%. So to go from 70 something to 90 something, his control group is the last 20 years. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be a half and half. It can be something else. But.
Right. It looks like the Angler's Wisdom Light is not working for some reason, but we do have a couple of questions from the audience. What do we got, Phil? Roy wants to know, what's the average battery life on the AquaView Strike View?
So I started off, I'll answer that, and I'll build to it. I started off running a camera called Go Fish. And the biggest problem I had is they don't have lithium ion batteries. And as far as I know, Strike View, the AquaView Strike View is the only one that has lithium ion batteries. And it wasn't that the Go Fish camera lacked the battery power. It's that I was fishing a lot for trout and salmon. And when you're under 50 degrees, those batteries themselves can't function. They get cold and the battery shuts off. So if you've ever run trail cameras, you'll see the same thing in the winter. The trail camera just won't work unless you put lithium ion batteries in it. And AquaView is the only one that has lithium ion batteries. And so it's the only one, like that Go Fish camera, its battery life was like 3 hours, but I would only get 15 minutes of footage and it would shut off. And then if I'd get it in the boat, warm it up and send it back out. But with the Strike View, AquaView Strike View, I was getting 4 hours very consistently. And that was great. You just put it on, it turns itself on when it hits the water. And to turn it off, you just got to dry the sensor part and then point the camera up.
Right. Yeah. I thought mine was up here. But it's not. I have a couple of them too, but it's pretty cool. It's just got a little
Do you want me to grab mine?
contact strip. Sure. If you have a handle or handler.
I'll be right back.
Do we have any other questions on there, Phil?
We got Roy has one more.
All right, I'm back. So this is the AquaView camera, and there is a wire that comes out the backside here. I clipped it off because I put a strike assist on here and that it was just in the way. So I clipped that off, but there's usually another wire loop like that one on the backside right here. So you would clip your line to here and then just clip another leader to here to your bait.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way that you have that set up, I completely forgot about that. But that's really cool. And the reason is, those cameras, they only have so much depth, right? Especially on Lake Erie or, a body of water that has dirty water. So he basically has the strike assist attached to the camera. So the strike assist is attached, through the system and everything like that. And then the camera basically is attached to the strike assist. And then he has both clipped together. So the camera is actually on the same snap as the strike assist. That way, if, they come apart, you're not going to lose your camera, if I remember correctly.
Phil had a picture of that rig. It showed a camera on the bottom of Lake Erie. Yeah, that was Lake Erie. Yep, there. So we broke that camera off, and then we trolled right over it 45 minutes later with another camera. So I got footage from the other camera of the camera I lost, but
at least you got to say one last farewell, right?
yeah.
All right. Looks like we have one more question. Roy wants to know, can you use it vertically jigging?
You could. I don't think in most circumstances it's worth it, because when you're vertically fishing, your line tension isn't away from the fish. Like when you're trolling, you're pulling it away from the fish. When you're vertically jigging, your line tension is up and down, but the fish is generally coming from the side. So when they pop their mouth open, they
Right.
can kind of swing in. It's come up a couple times when guys are jigging for lake trout, they tend to trigger the bite by reeling the bait away from the trout once it comes in, and then the lake trout will chase it up fast. So if you're pulling it away from the fish, you're doing the same thing as trolling, and then it might help. But otherwise, I don't think it matters. It's not going to hurt anything, but I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is maybe just more snags, when the bait does something weird under the water, or, you got to think, like, every time you jig up, you're stretching that spring, and then, so there's that kind of delayed reaction there, right, in your jigging action.
Yeah, if it was like
I don't
dead
know.
sticking, might be a little different.
Right. That's pretty awesome. I think that's all the questions that we have. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Oh, I could talk for hours, but I think we covered the basics of it.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Calvin. It's always a great time to talk to you. I always learn a ton. And I'm looking forward to seeing, Strike Assist grow and change the industry. And for everybody watching at home, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, Chuck.
I was just going to say, for everybody watching at home, definitely head over to the strikeassist.com website and just take a look around. Check out the pictures and the explanations and the videos. Maybe grab yourself some Strike Assist. Like Calvin said, there is a promo. You buy 5, you get 1 free, and that gives you a complete spread if you're 2-man boat on Lake Erie or something like that with 3 lines each.
And what I was going to say is just thank you for having me on and spreading the word. That's the biggest thing right now, is just making people aware of it. And then also we did a kayak trip on Lake Erie last fall, and that was a ton of fun. And I've been in kayaks a lot. But man, talk about being on level 1. It was, I feel like the second trip be like 4 times better, because you learn you learn so much that first trip. So if you're trying to get into kayak fishing, go book a trip with Chuck. Learn all those basics when it's safe, and he has all the equipment and the stuff you don't need you don't realize that you need to ask. It's the questions you don't know to ask that are often the most valuable. And that was just it would really shorten the learning curve.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a blast, and you did pretty good. I mean, you landed what? At least a couple. It was a couple steelhead.
Yeah.
Got some cool pictures. I was looking at one earlier today or last night when I was adjusting the thumbnail, where you're holding the steelhead in front of the skyline. It was just it was a fun trip. We got to plan another one of those.
Yep, that was a lot of fun. I think the only Strike Assist fish that got off, I broke the line. I think I let it wrap on the boat, and it broke. It broke the line, but otherwise we didn't lose any.
Didn't you lose a camera that trip too? Or maybe I was thinking of the story.
No, I don't
it was
think so.
Right after the Pete trip.
Yeah, right after. It was either right after or right before is when I lost that camera. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, everybody listening or watching at home, thanks for joining us on the Anglers Wisdom podcast. hope you got some great insight out of the show and got to know Calvin a little bit and this incredible product that, it's changing the way we look at everything. So definitely go over and check it out. Next Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a special episode. My good buddy, Mirko Piccoli, I think I said that right, will be joining us all the way from northern Italy. He's on the Italian kayak fishing team. He's won so many medals and, accolades that I can't even list them right now. But last year they brought home gold. So they are the current kayak fishing world champions. So we're going to bring them on and get some insight. Oh, and he also is the top bait designer for Tubertini, which is, a European company. So very intelligent guy. All right, guys, we will see you next Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Angler's Wisdom Podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today on the Angler's Wisdom Podcast. We hope you got some good insight out of the show and learned something new. Don't forget to go over to ampedoutdoors.com and support the title sponsor of the show. Follow them on social media and just show them some love. And lastly, head over to LakeErieKayakFishing.com and check out all the many resources as well as opportunities to book an unforgettable Lake Erie kayak fishing adventure with yours truly. You can also get yourself a Lake Erie kayak fishing gift card to the obsessed angler in your life. And remember, fishing is life, but safety comes first. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next Thursday live on the Angler's Wisdom Podcast.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! Oh! Oh, that's a nice one. Yeah!